The $2 promised. The snow fell in thick, silent sheets over the small Montana town, blanketing everything in white. It was the kind of cold that bit through layers of clothing and settled deep in your bones. Officer Mike Harrison had been patrolling the downtown area for 3 hours, watching the temperature drop as the sun began its descent behind the mountains. That's when he saw her. She couldn't have been more than 16, maybe 17 years old. She sat on the frozen sidewalk outside the old railway station, her thin jacket doing little against the bitter wind. Her cheeks were red and raw, tear-stained and trembling, but it wasn't her appearance that stopped Officer Harrison in his tracks. It was the cardboard sign she held with shaking hands. Dog for sale. Too, beside her lay a magnificent German shepherd, his dark coat dusted with snow. The dog's amber eyes watched the officer approach, alert but calm, as if he knew something the humans didn't yet understand. Officer Harrison had seen a lot in his 15 years on the force. He'd seen addiction, homelessness, domestic violence, and every shade of human desperation. But something about this scene, this girl, this dog, that sign hit him differently. "Miss," he said gently, approaching slowly, "are you all right?" The girl looked up at him, and he could see the war happening behind her eyes, pride fighting against desperation, fear battling with hope. "I'm fine," she whispered, but her voice cracked on the words. Officer Harrison knelt down beside her, ignoring the snow soaking through his uniform pants. "That's a beautiful dog. What's his name?" "Duke," she said softly, and at the sound of his name, the German shepherd's tail swept the snow twice. "He's 4 years old. He's trained. He's good. He's the best dog anyone could ever have." The officer noticed how her hand never left Duke's fur, how her fingers were buried in his coat like she was holding on to the only solid thing in a world that had become too slippery. "Why are you selling him, if you don't mind me asking?" The question broke something open inside her. Tears spilled over, freezing on her cheeks almost immediately. "My mom died 6 months ago," she began, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Cancer. It happened so fast. One day she was fine, and then she wasn't. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and we had Duke. Mom called him her gentle guardian. She rescued him when he was a puppy, and he never left her side, especially when she got sick." Officer Harrison stayed quiet, letting her speak. "After she died, I went to live with my aunt and uncle. They said I could come, but Duke couldn't. They said dogs are too expensive, too much trouble. I begged them. I promised I'd pay for everything, his food, his vet bills, everything. I got a job at the diner, working every shift I could after school. But last week my uncle gave me an ultimatum." She looked down at Duke, and the dog lifted his head to lick her hand. "He said if I didn't get rid of Duke by today, they'd take him to the shelter. And not the no-kill kind, the regular shelter where—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "I can't let that happen to him. Duke took care of my mom when she was dying. He slept next to her bed every night. He knew somehow that she needed him, and after she passed, he took care of me. When I couldn't stop crying, when I wanted to give up, Duke was there." Officer Harrison felt something tighten in his chest. He'd been a cop long enough to build walls to maintain professional distance, but those walls were crumbling. "So why $2? He asked. The girl's laugh was bitter and broken. "Because I need to know that whoever takes him values him. If I give him away for free, someone might take him who doesn't really want him, someone who might hurt him or neglect him. But if someone pays for him even just $2, it means they chose him. It means they want him. It means," her voice broke again, "it means he'll be worth something to them." The logic was heartbreaking in its innocence. This teenager who had lost everything was trying to protect her dog with the only method her broken heart could devise. "How long have you been out here?" Officer Harrison asked. "Since morning," she admitted. "People keep walking by. Some take pictures. Some laugh. One lady said she'd give me 50 cents. Another man said $2 was too much for a mutt." She looked at Duke with fierce pride. "But Duke isn't a mutt. He's purebred. He's worth thousands. He's worth everything." Officer Harrison stood up, and the girl's face fell, thinking he was leaving like everyone else. Instead, he reached for his radio. "Harrison to dispatch." "Go ahead, Harrison. I'm going to be 10 to 7 for a bit. Personal matter. Copy that." He turned off his radio and looked down at the girl. "What's your name?" "Emma." "Emma Rodriguez. Well, Emma, I'm Officer Mike Harrison, and I think we need to talk about Duke's future." Emma's eyes widened with hope and fear mixed together. "But first," Officer Harrison continued, "you're freezing, and so is Duke. There's a coffee shop right around the corner. Let's get you both warmed up." 20 minutes later, they sat in the corner of Maggie's coffee house. Emma wrapped her hands around a hot chocolate while Duke lay at her feet, finally warming up. Officer Harrison had bought them both food, a sandwich for Emma, a plain hamburger patty for Duke. "I've been thinking," Officer Harrison said, watching Emma devour her sandwich like she hadn't eaten in days. "I have a proposition for you." Emma looked up, cautious. "I'm not going to buy Duke from you for $2, he said, and watched her face start to crumble before he continued, "because Duke doesn't need a new owner. He already has one. He has you, but my aunt and uncle. I know a thing or two about the law, Emma." "You're 16, right?" She nodded. "In Montana, you can petition for emancipation at 16 under certain circumstances. It's not easy, and it takes time, but it's possible. And in the meantime, I know some people who might be able to help." He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Hey, Janet, it's Mike Harrison." "Yeah, I know it's late. Listen, I need a favor." What Emma didn't know was that Officer Harrison and his wife had lost their own daughter 3 years ago. Sarah had been 17, bright, beautiful, full of life, when a drunk driver ran a red light. The grief had nearly destroyed their marriage. They'd moved to this small Montana town to escape the memories, to start over, to find some kind of peace. They'd never found it. How could they? You don't get over losing a child. You just learn to carry it differently. But sitting here now, watching this brave, desperate girl try to protect the only family she had left, Officer Harrison felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Purpose, connection, hope. The call lasted 10 minutes. When he hung up, he looked at Emma with a small smile. "My wife, Janet, runs a non-profit that helps at-risk youth. She's also good friends with a family lawyer who does pro bono work. Here's what's going to happen. You and Duke are not going back to your aunt and uncle's house tonight." Emma started to protest, but he held up his hand. "Janet's already making up our guest room. You and Duke will stay with us while we figure this out. Tomorrow, we're meeting with the lawyer to discuss your options, and we're going to call social services about your living situation. Because, Emma, no one should have to sell their dog to feel safe." The girl stared at him like he'd just spoken in a foreign language. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Officer Harrison was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "Because 3 years ago, my wife and I lost our daughter. She was about your age, and every day since, I've wondered what the point was. Why we had to lose her. Why good people suffer. Why the world can be so cruel." He looked at Emma, then down at Duke. "Maybe this is why. Maybe Sarah would want me to help you. Maybe this is how we honor the people we've lost by protecting the ones who are still here." Emma began to cry then, really cry. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and wounded. Duke immediately stood up and put his head in her lap. And Officer Harrison saw, in that moment, exactly what Emma's mother must have seen in this dog: unwavering loyalty, unconditional love, and a protectiveness that transcended species. "I can't afford to pay you back," Emma said through her tears. "I'm not asking you to. But someday, when you're older and you've got your life together, maybe you'll see someone else who needs help. Maybe you'll stop and offer them a sandwich, or a place to stay, or just someone to listen. That's how you pay it forward." That night, Emma and Duke slept in a warm bed for the first time in 6 months. Officer Harrison and his wife Janet stayed up late in their kitchen, holding hands and talking quietly. "Are we crazy?" Janet asked. "Taking in a teenager and her dog?" Mike looked toward the guest room, where a light still glowed under the door. "Maybe. Probably. But Janet, when I saw that sign, dog for sale, too, I saw Sarah, I saw our daughter, and I thought, what if Sarah had needed help and no one stopped? What if she'd been alone and scared and everyone just walked past her?" Janet squeezed his hand. "We can't save everyone." "No," Mike agreed. "But we can save Emma. And right now that's enough." The legal process took 3 months. Officer Harrison and his wife fought through mountains of paperwork, court appearances, and negotiations with Emma's aunt and uncle, who ultimately decided they didn't want to fight for custody of a niece they'd never really wanted in the first place. Emma was granted emancipation 2 weeks before her 17th birthday. With Janet's help, she found a small apartment that allowed dogs, actually. The landlord was so moved by Emma's story that he reduced the rent and waived the pet deposit. But Emma didn't move out right away. She stayed with the Harrisons for another few months, finishing her junior year of high school, working at the diner, saving money. Duke became part of the family, going on morning runs with Mike and keeping Janet company while she worked from home. The local newspaper heard about the story and wanted to interview Emma. She agreed, but only on one condition: that they focus on the importance of keeping families together, including the four-legged members. "Duke isn't just my dog," she told the reporter. "He's my family. He was my mom's family. And when my mom died, he became the only thing I had left of her. Selling him wasn't about money. It was about knowing he'd be safe. that he'd be wanted, that someone would love him the way he deserved to be loved. The article ran on the front page with a photo of Emma and Duke, both of them healthy and happy, standing between Officer Harrison and his wife. The headline read, "The $2 Promise." How one girl's love for her dog restored a family's faith. Donations poured in from across the country. People sent money, gift cards, dog food, supplies. A veterinary clinic offered free care for Duke for life. A local business owner created a scholarship fund in Emma's name for other at-risk youth who were trying to stay in school despite difficult circumstances. But the most meaningful gift came from an unexpected source. Emma's English teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had been following the story closely. One day after class, she asked Emma to stay behind. "Your mother," Mrs. Patterson said carefully, "was Maria Rodriguez, wasn't she?" Emma nodded, surprised. "I knew your mother," Mrs. Patterson continued. "She was a year ahead of me in high school. We lost touch after graduation, but I always remembered her. She was kind, brave, and fiercely protective of the people she loved." The teacher smiled. "I see so much of her in you, Emma." Mrs. Patterson reached into her desk and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a letter Maria had written years ago, before she got sick, when Emma was just a little girl. The letter read, "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and I'm so sorry for that. I wanted more time with you. I wanted to see you graduate, fall in love, build a life, but life doesn't always give us what we want. I want you to know that you were the best thing that ever happened to me. Every single day with you was a gift, and I need you to promise me something. No matter what happens, no matter how hard things get, you keep going, you fight, you survive, you find joy again. And take care of Duke. I know he's just a puppy now, but he's special. He's going to take care of you when I can't. Let him. Don't be too proud to accept love, especially from a good dog who wants nothing more than to be by your side. You are stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and more loved than you can imagine. And when things get dark, because they will get dark, sometimes remember that darkness is just the absence of light. Find your light, baby girl. Be your own light. I love you forever." Mom Emma read the letter 3 times before she could speak. When she finally looked up at Mrs. Patterson, her eyes were filled with tears, but she was smiling. She knew, Emma whispered. Somehow, she knew. That evening, Emma sat on the Harrisons' porch with Duke's head in her lap, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in shades of orange and pink. Officer Harrison came out and sat beside her. "You doing okay?" he asked. "Yeah," Emma said, and for the first time in months she meant it. "I was thinking about that day, when you found me with the sign. What about it? I thought I was selling Duke to save him, but really that sign saved me. If you hadn't stopped, if you hadn't cared—" She didn't finish the sentence. "Someone would have stopped," Officer Harrison said firmly. "Someone would have cared." Emma looked at him. "But it was you. And that matters." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the day fade into night. Duke sighed contentedly, warm and safe and loved. "Officer Harrison," Emma said quietly. "You can call me Mike, Emma. We've been through too much for formalities." "Mike," she corrected, testing out the familiarity. "Thank you. For everything. For seeing me when everyone else just walked past. For believing I was worth saving." "Emma," Mike said, his voice rough with emotion. "You were always worth saving. You just needed someone to show you that." 2 years later, Emma graduated high school with honors. She'd been accepted to the state university with a full scholarship, planning to study social work. She wanted to help other kids like her kids who'd fallen through the cracks, who'd lost their families, who needed someone to fight for them. Duke was older now, a bit gray around the muzzle, but still Emma's constant companion. He'd been certified as a therapy dog and visited hospitals and nursing homes with Emma, bringing comfort to people who needed it most. Officer Mike Harrison and his wife Janet became Emma's legal guardians, though she insisted on calling them family rather than parents. It wasn't about replacing her mother. No one could do that. It was about honoring her mother's memory by accepting the love and support that came after. On graduation day, Emma gave a speech as class valedictorian. She talked about loss and resilience, about the difference between surviving and living, about the power of compassion. 2 years ago, she told the crowd, I sat in the snow with a cardboard sign, trying to sell my dog for $2. I thought I was at the end of my story. I thought I had nothing left. But that moment wasn't an ending, it was a beginning, because someone stopped, someone cared. Someone saw a scared girl with a dog and decided to help. She looked out at Mike and Janet Harrison, sitting in the front row with Duke between them, the dog wearing a bow tie for the occasion. We spend so much time looking away from pain, from need, from suffering. It's easier to walk past, to pretend we don't see, to tell ourselves that someone else will help. But what if we stopped? What if we looked? What if we cared? What would the world look like then? The audience was silent, hanging on every word. My mother used to tell me that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice. It's choosing to show up, to stay, to fight for the people and things that matter. And sometimes the people who matter most are strangers holding cardboard signs in the snow. When Emma finished her speech, the entire auditorium rose in a standing ovation. But she only had eyes for Duke, who was wagging his tail so hard his whole body shook, and for Mike and Janet, who were crying and clapping and radiating pride. After the ceremony, a young woman approached Emma nervously. She looked about 19 or 20, with tired eyes and a baby on her hip. "I heard your speech," the woman said, "and I wanted to thank you. I've been homeless for 3 months, living in my car with my daughter. I've been too ashamed to ask for help, but you made me realize maybe it's okay to need help. Maybe it's not giving up. Maybe it's actually being brave." Emma hugged this stranger, this woman who reminded her so much of her younger self. "It's absolutely okay to need help," she said firmly. "And asking for it is the bravest thing you can do." She turned to Mike and Janet. "Can we?" "Already on it," Janet said, pulling out her phone to make calls to the shelter network she'd spent 2 years building. That night, as Emma lay in her childhood bed for one of the last times before moving to the university dorms, Duke curled up at her feet like always. She thought about her mother, about that letter, about the long journey from that frozen sidewalk to this warm room. She'd kept her mother's promise. She'd fought. She'd survived. She'd found joy again. And Duke, sweet, loyal, perfect Duke, had been with her every step of the way, worth infinitely more than $2, worth more than all the money in the world. But because some things can't be bought or sold, some things can only be cherished, protected, and loved with every fiber of your being. As Emma drifted off to sleep, she whispered into the darkness, "I made it, Mom. We made it, and somewhere, in whatever place mothers go when they leave this world." Maria Rodriguez smiled, knowing her daughter had found her light. The end.